I was so pissed.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Talking to the Benfica podcast. My name is Alfredo, and I'm here with Steve Santos. Steve, you realize I always introduce you guys, and I never mention my name.
That's because you're so famous you don't even need to introduce yourself. Everybody knows exactly who you are.
Is that what it is?
That's exactly what it is. Dude, you walk
Way to
around in
fool me.
Portugal and get pulled over by people who watch a podcast. I'm in Toronto, not once has it happened to me. I'm telling you.
That's because you hide in Toronto. Se fosse para casa do Benfica, man, comprava tudo cervejas.
Pode ser.
Anyway, we have a good podcast, and let me just say that we apologize for being absent. I just looked, and the last podcast we put out was 4 weeks ago, Steve.
Yeah,
4 weeks ago, dude.
November 8th, I believe it was.
Yeah. So I had a couple things going. I was actually in Portugal a couple weeks ago on a family matter. Last week, Steve and I got together. We did record a podcast. We couldn't get it going on Hangouts. We recorded a podcast on Skype, but we lost all of the audio. It was a good podcast in which we basically recapped the past 2 weeks. But here we are. So on tonight's podcast, we're just going to scrub it up. Tonight's podcast, we will look back at the Maritimo game, Benfica's trip to the Madeira island. We'll also look back at the Benfica and Napoli game that happened just yesterday. And we'll look ahead to the derby. And as a kind of a reward or a makeup for all of these weeks being absence, I can officially announce that we will be doing a derby pre-game show live here on YouTube. So while you're waiting for your stream to come up or for the game to come up at home in front of your TV on What May you could just tune us in, watch us, discuss the game, have a little pre-game talk. Cristiano hopefully will be here. He's not here tonight, but he will be here. We also have a couple other special guests that we will have. We will come on about maybe an hour and 15 before kickoff, and we will sign off about 5 minutes before the kickoff so you can get ready. You can put on your favorite and lucky underwear for the derby. So on tonight's podcast, as I mentioned, we have all of that and this special announcement. So, Steve, let's get right into it with the game against Maritimo. I'll give you the lineup. Ederson was in goal. Semedo, Luizão, Lindelof, and Almeida were across the back. Pesa and I almost said Pesa and Fisi.
That would have been pretty funny.
Fesa and Pizzi were in the middle. Salvio and Servi, Gedge and Mitroglou. And look, nothing here. It doesn't look like Rui Vitória is changing much. Of course, there's not really that much available to him yet at full strength. We got Rafa back, but he's not yet in game shape. I think that Jardel also is not in game shape. Grimaldo's not available. Eliseu, apparently something with his thigh, so he's out. So Almeida's been deputizing at left back. But really the strongest 11 that Rui Vitória could put out there. Steve, I was actually talking to my dad, and my dad seems to think that there's a little bit of fatigue setting into these guys because there's not a lot of rotation. What are your feelings?
There's an argument for that. I think the guys who seem to run a lot. I think Gedge for me looks tired. Salvio, the doubt that it's just fatigue, but he's looking very subpar of late. I mean, the Salvio that beats people one-on-one is gone. So all that you have left is a Salvio of horrible decisions and shooting from anywhere and everywhere. It's been sad. Those are the two ones that are really in your face, if you ask me. I don't. Semedo is another guy who sprints a lot at each match and does a lot of up and down the wing, but he looks just fine. The two guys that I question what their fitness level is at the moment is Gedge and Salvio. The rest of the team, it's a matter of the games we're playing. I don't think it's so much fatigue for the rest of the team.
Right. So we'll just have to keep an eye out. Of course, now we get a little break from playing midweek, at least for 3 or 4 weeks. But we do play the Portuguese Cup this coming week, midweek against Real Massama. But we have a very busy December, which I'll go into. But getting back to the game, um, a very early goal allowed, and I can't remember for the life of me last time Benfica allowed a very early goal. Perhaps no, what was it? Not too long ago, we did allow a very early goal, but Benfica was able to get back into it, if I'm not mistaken. Or was it the conversation we were having about giving up the early goal against Maritimo? And then I think Cristiano said on our chat that said, well, at least they have left us enough time to get back with on the score, but that wasn't to be. Even though we got the tie in the 27th minute, it did seem that we were very wasteful at the Madeira.
Yeah, we didn't create a lot of chances. We seldom do create a boatload of chances. Even when we score 4 or 5 or 6, it doesn't seem like we create hundreds of chances of on goal, or hundreds is obviously an overstatement. But this match, I wasn't able to watch live, and I found out the score. I was mentioned in some tweets, and I heard a little bit about the game, and I was expecting to watch a different match when I sat down and saw it. This was a match where I felt we've done enough to win. I'm not going to say we had an amazing match, but we were in control for most of the match. Maritimo came at our net 3-4 times. Two to three of those times were very dangerous. They scored twice. They had at least one or two very good chances. But I've watched us play worse and win. That game didn't really make anything set in for me and say, oh my God, this team is a lot worse than I thought it was. I saw the frailties that we show. I mean, we're a team that doesn't control the game with the ball enough for me. We're a team that doesn't create enough chances for me. But a game that really left me worried, per se. I was more worried about what the reaction after this game, after watching it, was than the game itself. I mean, every year you end up losing to a team that only makes a couple of attacks, or losing or tying, dropping points, that only comes to your net a couple of times and scores, and you go and have a handful of opportunities and aren't able to put them away. That happens to every big club in every league, basically every year. So that wasn't a result that left me really upset or worried or shocking or shocked. So it is what it is. The game, the ball is round. There's 22 players on the pitch. This is going to happen. I just wish I wish that we wouldn't jump to conclusions over one single game instead of looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. We got a couple things. We got a couple things going here, right? I think that, yeah, I totally agree with you. There's games that you might be there for 180, 360 minutes and you won't get a score. That's just the thing, the way it shakes out. Whether you're hitting posts and uprights, or the goalie is having the game of his life, there's going to be games like that. I mean, sometimes you need that Strulinha de sorte, and I think that Benfica was missing that. But I think to me, there's a couple things. First of all, it's the moment at which this loss comes at, in the eve of the derby. Of course, we had 5 points ahead of Sporting. Now with this loss, it's reduced to 2. And now that we play Sporting, there's a chance that they could leapfrog us with the win if they beat us. So it's the timing of it. The other thing to me is that have talked about this all season here on the podcast, is the fact that there's, despite Benfica winning a lot of games and not having lost a game up until this point, there's a lot of flaws in Benfica's system. And I think this loss, I think it maybe, I don't want to say humbles the team, but it really makes the team take a step back and really look at things that could be doing that where they can improve. And I think that this loss is kind of eye-opening for the team, and it's a sign that the team needs to continue to improve and needs to work on things to improve, because always playing the way they have will win you the majority of the games against the opposition that we face. But there's times where you're going to find organized teams with very good defensive lines, very well organized in the back, closed off with some high pressure to start, and they'll score on an opening or on a miscue, just like Maritimo did on the Luizão slip. And then we have a very, very hard time getting back at them. So perhaps it's a reason for Benfica to take a step back, for the players to think about what's going on, for Rui Vitória to look at the system and look at other alternatives, for them to look at other ways that they could be beating these teams. I think this, regardless of the timing of this loss, as I've mentioned, I think it's perhaps a necessary loss for Benfica, I think.
Well, necessary loss is always a word that you don't want to use, but I could see your angle. I mean, areas to improve. There's a bunch. I mean, the way Maritimo set up with basically a 5-man back line with 3 center backs, they kept on being able to close down the space in between lines in front of the defenders, because they always had the spare man in the 3 there. So they would always bring out whoever the guy was closest to the ball and not let whoever's picking up the ball turn around. So that's when you need to have some planned movements, some I don't want to say repetitive and boring training sessions, but that's maybe what we need. When you have a team that is showing you X and Y problems, you should already be expecting that. I mean, closing up the middle of the pitch with 3 defenders is nothing new. Other teams are going to do it, especially now that Maritimo have showed that it works. We should have ways to incorporate an extra man in that zone so that we could overcome the 3rd guy. I mean, Gonçalo Guedes was constantly coming off of the front line, trying to receive the ball in that little pocket of space versus Maritimo. But whoever the center back was closest to him would just come right up against him, a lot of times foul him, which is another thing that I guess we should have to talk about. There was a lot of anti-jogo and a lot of fouling and a lot of BS in that game. But when he's not getting fouled, he doesn't have the support coming into him where he can lay the ball off. He doesn't have Servi overloading that zone. He doesn't have Pizzi getting into the opponent's block. These are things that, if we want to beat teams that are of our level and, let's say, better, we're going to need these I can't think of a better word to use other than planned movement. These routines.
Yeah.
And we do not have it.
Yeah, and I mean, not to make excuses, but we're also missing a guy that plays perfectly in those pockets of spaces in Jonas. I mean, so far we've been able to make do without him. But I don't think it's here's, and I hate to go away from the subject, and I totally agree with you with that. We don't have a guy to play within the pockets of space, and I think that maybe Horta is the guy that could play in those pockets of space, even though Rui Vitória likes to use him differently. But there's something wrong with the team when your best scorer is a guy that plays in the midfield, that plays as an 8. So there's something wrong with that.
And in the matches against difficult opponents or against opponents that are well planned out and have a very good game plan like Maritimo does, Pizzi very rarely gets into that final third. He's always stuck in the construction area of the pitch, more in the midfield, and he can't get into those areas. If you watch, we'll go a little bit into the Napoli game, that happened a lot as well. But even in the Maritimo game, it's very, very rare that Pizzi has the option of facing the goal and being able to play inside. They were always shaped out so that the ball, when Pizzi had it, was always at the best going to be played a cross-field switch, because there was nothing available to him inside to Guedes or to whoever the winger would be, maybe pinching in. It was always a ball out to the wing, or he'd have to turn around. It was very well planned. And that is something that we have to find ways to get around. Do we bring Lindelof a little bit further up the pitch to allow him to use his way of attracting defenses towards him and how he likes to carry the ball? We don't know, but we have to look at this because it's going to catch up to us. I don't see us beating the teams that are of our level, but I'm scared that if we have more mishaps against the teams that are below our level, that we're going to start dropping points. So
yeah, we're going to have to find ways. I mean, at one point, I remember watching the game. At one point, Maritimo have had 2 blocks of 5 guys, defined 5 guys, because they were playing with 3 center defenders, central defenders. Then the wing backs would drop in to make the 5 guys in the back, and then the midfield guys would drop in. So we had 5 back, a very compressed 2 banks of 5, very compressed, with no pockets of space for Benfica to operate on. And then when you have guys like Salvio, who is not in his best form currently, which is where Benfica could take advantage of the mismatches by beating guys on the wings when they have them isolated, it's very hard to get through that middle and play the way Benfica likes to play, through the middle, and with Pizzi showing up in the final third with a chance to score.
It's that's a reoccurring theme throughout the side. I think there's only maybe one guy right now that looks like he's able to beat players 1v1. And I'll let you guess who I think that person is. And you know what? No, Servi hasn't been able to do it. I think it's Semedo. Semedo's the guy who's constantly causing those mismatches. Everyone else just can't do it right now.
Yeah, I think, well, I agree with you with Semedo, but you also think that Semedo has when you have that much time to face a defender and that much room to face a defender, it becomes a lot easier to beat a defender than for a guy that gets the ball and he already has as a defender tighter on him. I think that Servi is capable. I just think that teams have done their homework and they have closed off the way Benfica needs to is playing. So that's why Benfica needs to change the way they're playing, find out a few variations. I'm not saying completely change the way the team is playing, but you got to find alternatives. For when plan A is not working, you go to plan B.
Absolutely.
So, and also, I mean, you mentioned there was a lot of fouls in the beginning. I think the game ended with Maritimo with 19 fouls, and out of those 19 fouls, they got 6 yellow cards. 4 of those yellow cards came after the 86th minute, and I'm sure a couple of them were for wasting time. But, I mean, there was a lot of aggressive play by Maritimo, a lot of sticking by Maritimo, a lot of persistent fouling by Maritimo, and the referee never really did anything about it. I remember that guy that was in charge of marking Gonçalo Guedes directly, he committed at least 2-3 fouls on Gonçalo Guedes, and he didn't see a yellow card until the second half, almost the end of the second half. So, so anyway, so we did dominate, but we just lacked a little bit of that luck and that lack of a plan B. I think that the team kept a cool head throughout. I think that in the last 15 minutes, things got a little bit more rushed. But I think that, we're missing that spark. I think that Rafa coming in, we obviously know that Rafa's still not at his best. He's still not in his game shape. He also missed a couple good chances. We know he's not a finisher. I think that Steve has said it here, that he's not a finisher. But some of those chances, you got to put those away, and maybe that's a break that you need to build up your confidence. Forget about Carrillo. I think that at this point I've given up on Carrillo. And the Carrillo thing, it's nothing new. He wasn't consistent as Sporting. He did have a good start of the season last season, which is when we grabbed him. But other than that, he was always a very inconsistent player, a guy with loads of talent, but very inconsistent, not enough intensity. Not a lot of urgency to make things happen. Not the guy that Benfica was expecting to get. He may end up turning out that way, and we're hoping that he does. But as of right now, I much have rather, and I know that Steve, I commented this with you. I much have rather have an Elder Costa getting the minutes that Carrillo is getting at a very lower salary.
I think we've all said it here before. Carrillo, he's a hard guy to watch because he looks so lax. But he's got a lot of talent, and he knows when to turn the pace on and when to give the change of pace. I I'm not saying for sure he's going to be a world beater for us, but I don't know if I'd go as far as saying I'd want Elder Costa back instead of him. Uh, and I think there's Zivkovic, there's Rafa, there's
Forgot about
players
Zivkovic.
there's players around that if um, if it came to it, I would rather see them get a few minutes. What's the fast kids on the B team? Gonçalves is really quick, different. He could change the game up with his pace. João Carvalho also on the B team. So that I just because of who you use, I know Elder Costa scored a nice goal this weekend, but I
Ah,
I don't think he's the right man. But I see where you're going. Carillo's that guy who's just he's very difficult for the fan to watch.
yeah. Well, and
No
the thing is,
matter how no matter how technically talented he is, he always looks like he's not interested,
well,
and that's hard.
yeah, and the thing is that I think that at this point he's gotten more than his fair share of chances, and there hasn't really been a game where you've said, well, yeah, that's the shade of Carrillo that I'd like to see, or that we know that's what Carrillo
Was
can
it
bring to this team.
the 6-0 versus Maritimo that I think he came on, he played well.
Up, I'm
But
at six
at that, I
six
know
nil, bro.
at that point it's easy. But that's the one game that I could say that I was impressed and I was excited to see more of him. But aside from that, yes, I'd have to agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll just have to see. But look, there's other guys on the wings ready to play. I think that keeps going the way he's going, I think eventually you will lose his spot. I think that Rafa's going to start eating up more and more minutes. I wonder who's going to end up on the right.
You could go inverted wingers, Servi on one side, Rafa on the other. You could. You could put Gedge back out on the wing and put Rafa in the hole behind whoever the forward is. So there is no we have players that we could really change the way we play from now. It's just a matter of tweaking a couple of guys, and then it completely changes the way we've been playing. I mean, inverted wingers would do it and give a lot more space for Semedo to get wide and further down the pitch. Grimaldo, when he comes back, if he had a right-footed player coming inside instead of Servi kind of always staying to the outside, there is ways we could change the way we're playing. It's just it's a slightly drastic move.
Yeah, we have options. I know what you're saying. It is drastic, but I think that if we continue with being as, for example, Salvi the way he is, he's brought really nothing to the team these past few games. I think that at one point you got to be looking to see what other alternatives are out there. I'm still good with Servi. You think that there's too much of a drastic change for Salvi? You think it warrants a change?
I would change Salvio. I would have made that change already. I think uh, he hasn't been himself for most of this season. We've only seen flashes of that of what makes him good. Really, that athleticism and that 1v1 ability. We've only seen flashes of that. But the thing is, we've had some injuries. Now that Rafa's back, I think you're going to see that's my worry, is that Salvio is one of Vitoria's men and he's going to keep him, and you're going to see Servi dropped instead. That's my biggest worry. Not that I think Servi's had a good run of form, maybe the past 4 or 5 matches, just that I think he's done better than Salvio is. But I'm scared that Salvio has a certain status on the team where he's going to get a pass before Servi does.
Well, I think Servi is, at least he has more explosive ability than Salvio does.
At the moment, he does, yeah.
Yeah, Salvio may know a little bit more about the team, but I think he gets gassed out too early. He does not help out Nelson Semedo, and Nelson Semedo gets in trouble towards the end of the game because Salvio is not helping out as much.
Yeah, and then I don't know whose idea it was in the Napoli game to have him playing so deep too. So what?
Yeah.
That's a whole
So
other can of worms.
since you bring up the Napoli game, let's get into the Napoli game, which took place yesterday. Benfica needing a win to get through, assuming that Besitkas was going to go to Ukraine and beat the number 4 team in the group, the team that had yet to win a game. And as it turns out, 4-0 for Kiev at the half, and Benfica not having a very good first half with Napoli. And it must be said, we can't take anything away from Napoli. Napoli is a very, very good side. Steve, you and I just traded a couple texts last night as you were watching the game and Napoli, but this is a very, very good Napoli team.
That's probably not probably. That's the best side that's played at the Luge this year. I can't think of anybody that's played better than that's the best side Benfica's played all year. A team that's supremely organized in all 4 phases of the game. I mean, there is not a thing that this team does badly. It's weaknesses. Benfica weren't able to exploit any weaknesses. They were able to exploit all of ours. You knew exactly what they wanted to do and how they wanted to play, but we constantly couldn't stop them from doing it. Constantly, they were able to bring the ball out from the back and just play the ball through each sector. You get the ball in Koulibaly's feet, and it ends up somewhere in between the lines of the midfield and our midfield and our defense almost every freaking time, and we had no way of stopping it. Is that down to player personnel? Is that down to lack of proper tactical adjustments by Rui Vitoria? Probably a little bit of both, but this Napoli team is, it's, if you ask me, it's a team that wins the league wins our league quite easily. I think player for player, we have a very difficult time placing anybody into their 11, and then they're just very well coached. Extremely well coached.
So we saw, as we mentioned, a very good Napoli team, but we also saw a very nervous Benfica coming into this game. And I don't know how much of it has to do with the moment that the team was at. This was a crucial game. There's Champions League bonuses at stake. There's millions at stake for the team making it to the next round. The players, obviously, probably a lot of them have a clause in their contract that will give them an additional prize money if they make it into the knockout rounds of the Champions League. Then you have you're coming off a loss and you're on the eve of a very important game for the league. It's a very important time for this team, and I don't know how much of that importance and that stress level added to the fact that the team showed up really, really nervous. And then we have the team going in at halftime, not having played a very good half, finding out the result in Kiev was 4-0, coming out just as bad as they were in the first half. And you got Napoli saying, okay, well, this game is up for grabs. Benfica's not going for it. We want to come out first in the group so we don't have to face the first place teams. So Benfica, at what point do you think that Benfica checked out at the point that they found out, well, it's 4-0 in Kiev? Kiev is playing with Besitkas is playing with one less men because one of them got thrown out. Do you think that Benfica checks out at this point? They just conserve their energy for the derby this weekend?
It looked that way. Napoli's coach after the match mentioned it, that Benfica were less intense in the second half. Rui Vitoria also mentions it in his press conference, saying that obviously they knew what was going on in the Ukraine, and points to that. But you would like to think that that wasn't the case. But there's some evidence of it. That's for sure.
Yeah. So we finish up the Champions League campaign with 2 wins against the weakest team of the group, Dinamo Kiev. 2 ties that could have very easily been wins, and we could have classified for the group stage, the knockout stages easier. I'm talking about the ties against Besitkas, both at the Luge and Turkey, and then we have 2 losses against Napoli, which we really can't say much about it. I mean, they would outplay us both games, both in Naples and in Lisbon last night. So nothing to say that. I mean, and then again, we've had Benfica with 10, 11 points not being able to qualify for the next round. And this time around, 9 points was just what the doctor ordered. So it's a little bit unusual, the fact that, we win 2 games, draw 2 and lose 2 and still make it through. But the important is that we end up collecting that money. I think Babala was saying 22.4 million just for the group stages that Benfica collected from UEFA for their group stage campaign. So that's nothing to shake at. And I think that when teams are in the Champions League, they budget for these type of numbers. They count on this money, and it's very important for teams to get this money. And it surely is important for Benfica to be able to collect this money and go on to the group stages. It wasn't a very stellar, not the group stages, the round robin, the knockout stages. It wasn't a stellar it wasn't a stellar group stage for Benfica, but I mean, it is what it is. We're in between the top 16 teams in Europe, so that's important for Benfica. And actually, this was the first time ever, at least in the new format, that a coach has qualified Benfica for the knockout stages twice consecutively, 2 years in a row.
It is. That is a feat that you have to give him credit for. I know you're the host, but a couple reoccurring themes that I want your take on. I believe it's the pre-game presser before Maritimo. Journalists, forgive me for forgetting who it was because I didn't write it down. Asked Rui Vitoria if this is the most important or most decisive week of the season so far. This is before Maritimo, so you have Maritimo, Napoli, and Sporting in a matter of just a little bit over a week. It must have been a Thursday. And Rui Vitoria goes on his spiel about the next match is always the most important, and we always play. And how do you feel with that speech, given the performance that you saw at the Luge yesterday?
I mean, players are people just like everyone else. They're on social media. They're on TV. They watch TV. They read the papers. Of course, the message that Rui Vitoria might be hammering. This is the game that we need to focus on. This is the game that's ahead. But in your subconscious, you got to think that of the moment and what's behind you and what's ahead of you and what's in front of you. So I think that as a player, it's very hard to ignore games that are coming after the game you're faced with and the moment in which the team is in. I know that, like I said, Rui Vitoria might be hammering that point that the important is the game that we play next. But the players are very well aware of what's going on and what kind of a moment the team is having. I don't think they're that isolated from reality. So
I completely agree with you, and that's a side where I was expecting more from Louis Vuitton. I mean, we all have our opinion of him, and most of us think that he's probably better at managing men and managing the locker room and more on the psychological side of the game. And I was expecting not to be able to see that shift so apparent in the Napoli game. And then another thing that we constantly see is against teams of similar or better quality, we have a very, very tough time. And that's what happened against Napoli.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see.
Yeah, we got a huge test this weekend, but before we move on to Sporting, the draw for the knockout stages, it comes up this Monday. I think 11. I want to say 12 local, maybe, or 11 a.m. Eastern Standard. I'm not really sure what time it's at, but it's Monday.
It's Monday. I believe it's like 12 in Portugal, if I remember right. Because I
Yeah,
find out about who are playing on the way into work, so I'm thinking it's probably around 12 or 1 in
yeah.
Portugal.
Yeah, so I'll give you a list of possible adversaries for Benfica: Borussia Dortmund, Arsenal, Juventus, Atletico Madrid, Leicester, Monaco, and Barca. Those are the possible opponents for Benfica.
Alfie, I think it's Leicester.
Leicester,
You sound almost as bad. You sound almost as bad as the Portuguese commentators.
Leicester,
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 Leicester.
Listerine. Sorry, Leicester. Sorry,
That
man.
would obviously be the team we want to play, to have the commentators butcher their name over and over again. And because of the teams available, I believe they're the most attainable.
My inner JJ just came out. Anyway, so that's quite a group. That's quite a group of teams, and I think that right now there's no sense in saying, "Well, oh, I want this team or I want that team." Regardless, I mean, you're gonna have to play whichever. Obviously, you might have a better chance against some others, but I think that all are even Leicester. I mean, they came to the Dragão with their bench. They got spanked 5-0, but they have a very good team. They're not doing all that well in the Premiership this year. So the Champions League is something that they want to do well in. So we'll see. I mean, Dortmund, Arsenal, who's playing well, Juventus, Madrid, Monaco. Monaco's been very well coached by Jardim, Leonardo Jardim. So, I mean, very tough group of teams. So we'll find out on Monday who Benfica will play. And I think the next round will be played sometime in February, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, normally I think first week of February, if I remember right.
Yeah, first week of February. The good thing, or the bad thing, I should say, there's no teams from Russia, so you won't get that team from Russia that's just coming out of their winter preseason. That's it. So next up, Sporting this Sunday, 6 p.m. local. Ref is Jorge Souza. Jorge Souza has only done one Benfica game so far this year. Benfica's win against Braga at Estádio da Luz. Has not refed any Sporting games. I'll give you some stats on Sporting. Sporting is currently second, 2 points behind Benfica with 27 points to their name. 8 wins, 3 ties, 1 loss. Away, 2 wins, 2 ties, and 1 loss. Their goals scored away, 6 goals scored away, and 6 allowed. Not a very stellar there for Sporting as far as goals scored and goals allowed. Last 5 at the Luz, 2 wins for Benfica, 2 losses and 1 tie. Last 10 head-to-head against Sporting, 4 wins for Benfica, 3 losses and 3 ties. Steve, very, very crucial game, but it's not a title decider by no means.
No, last season would be evidence that it's not a title decider. That Sporting has difficulty with the lesser clubs, but is always super motivated and super concentrated against teams like Benfica. So I will go. I don't believe Benfica is going to win this match, but I don't believe that even if they don't win the match, that it will be the end of the season and the title is now in Sporting's hands, just because of the precedent that they set last year.
Yeah, I don't think that it'll. Here's the biggest thing for me is. And I know that we lost all games, but the most important one to Sporting. I don't know how much of a loss in this game is really going to affect the team mentally, knowing that for the past couple of years they really haven't been able to beat Sporting. But that one time where it was most important. So I'm not sure what the mental aspects will play. You got the loss against Maritimo, you got the loss against Napoli, and now you got Sporting.
I'll tell you what I feel. I don't think. I personally don't think. Um, I don't think Rui Vitória can outcoach JJ in a match like this. I hate to say it, but I don't believe that uh, Benfica's players believe it either. And they probably go into a match like this with a little bit of a stigma that they are not properly prepared to play versus Sporting or versus Jesus more than Sporting. I think they know what he's capable of. They know how well he prepares the matches. They know what they're getting now, and that's the first handicap that I feel we have going against them.
Yeah. It's going to be a tough game. We'll have more about the game on our pregame show. So we'll discuss a little bit more about the game more in depth, but I think that it's a very crucial game for Benfica. I fear what the mental consequences of a loss may do for this team. I think that 3 losses in a row might be a little tough and the team will have to go back and reach down. And I think that by no means do I think that Sporting will go the rest of the league without losing a game or losing any points. But I fear what the mental aspect, what the mental consequences will be for Benfica if we do lose this game at the Luge. We'll just have to see. Steve, anything else you wanted to add before we get into some Twitter questions?
Yeah, just because I probably won't be on Sunday, just a couple things that I'm expecting Sporting to do and to keep an eye out for. Nothing obviously super surprising or anything like that. Look for a lot of 1v1 occasions. Gelson versus Andre Almeida.
Yeah.
They are going to play that very often. Look for Pizzi not getting any time on the ball at all. I expect it will probably be a combination of Adrian and whoever they play at second forward, who I think in a game like this might end up being Bruno Cesar. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Also, look that they will not allow Lindelof to play the ball out of the back, basically ever. The ball will always come out of whoever that's playing on the other side. There's a lot of people calling for Luizão's head after the past 2 matches, but I highly doubt that will happen. I believe that was all the points that I wanted to make. Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah. Definitely that Gelson versus Andre Almeida, that's going to be something. Do you think that there'll be a little bit of a variation in the game idea with Rui Vitória on the tactical planning for this game, or do you think he just leaves things as is?
I think your 11 is going to be what we've seen, the same best 11 that we could normally choose. He may try to adjust some things. Like in the Champions League, we always seemed very, very attentive on trying to control the depth that the other team attacks with and the width. So we played a lot closer in between lines, very good at seeing when the ball is how they say covered or uncovered. So there's pressure on the ball. You can press that back line way high up because the guy's not going to be able to pass the ball behind you accurately so that the players can run onto it. But aside from that, it's just going to be one of those games where Benfica is going to be playing a little bit less the star role. They know that they're not going to see as much as the ball as they normally do versus other teams, so they're going to have to protect themselves when they're defending a bit better than they do in the Portuguese league normally. But I don't expect Rui Vitória to play a third man in the midfield. We don't, unless he's going to go with Samaris. We don't really have that suits that fit.
What about Danilo?
Danilo, he's played next to nothing all season. He's going to play in the derby.
I don't know.
Highly doubt it. Rafa has played 2 matches. I would love to see him start. If he has 60 good minutes in him, I'd rather him play for 60 minutes and see Salvio Carrillo come off the bench, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like my gut is telling me that Rui Vitória is going to go with the same 11 he's been using very often, and he's going to kind of try to see how the game plays out in the first half. If he's still 0-0 in the first half, he's going to be a pretty happy man.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
And I know that you and I, when we were talking via text messages, you say that you don't foresee Rafa starting until the new year.
No, not starting. Maybe in the Tasa game. I forgot that we have that coming up soon. But in the league, I don't think he's going to start that quick unless he comes on and just kills some team. You know what I mean? Like if he plays on the Tasa and is just like the lights out and you can't keep him off, then maybe. But I think that his progression into the side is going to be the way it's been. A substitute appearance until he finally looks like he's at that level, and then he's going to get his spot. The one thing that I am interested to see is whether Jonas is going to make it into the roster for Sunday. I don't think he goes into the 11. So I pray that he doesn't go straight into the 11 because it doesn't bode well if he does. But if he makes it into the game roster is what I'm interested to see.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't go straight into the 11, to be honest with you, because last time we rushed him and, we don't know if it had anything to do with us rushing him, but it's for sure. He came out and played after what they said it was going to be a 6 to 8 week absence, and he comes out in 2 weeks, and then he's been hurt since then. So I don't know if it had anything to do with it. It all connects, but I'm not a medical expert, so I can tell you, and I'm not examining the guy, and I'm not looking at his shorts to tell you. But I hope that we don't rush him again. And besides, I don't think he's in game shape. A guy at that age needs a little bit more time to get into game shape. So,
especially him, he's never been a supreme athlete.
Right. And let's get into some Twitter questions. Lino Fernandes is asking, or he's saying Raul should now be the everyday starting striker. Steve, do you agree? I don't know. Yeah, I'll go first. I think that I love the effort that Raul puts forth, and every time he plays, he always gives us 120%. But I think that there's games that need a player like Raul, and there's games that need a player like Mitroglou. I think that if Mitroglou is on and he's able to touch and go and play with the guys that are coming from the offensive transition, I think that Mitroglou is ideal. I think that if Mitroglou starts snatching some goals, he's missed quite a few, but I think that if he starts snatching some goals, it'll be hard to stop him. But I think right now he's not in his best form. And as I've mentioned, our best scorer is actually a guy from the midfield. What's going on with our forwards? Why can't we have more production from our forwards? So I don't know if Raul is the answer to the question, but I think they're two very different players that bring to the team, and I think that's based on what the game plan is for that day. Steve,
you don't leave me much room to add anything. To be absolutely honest, I don't think that he's the answer. I don't think Mitroglou is the answer either. My complete personal opinion is I want to see Guedes play at 9. That's my. I want to see Guedes with Jonas behind him or Rafa behind him, and that. If you're saying, Steve, you're taking over the team tomorrow, I want to see that. I just want to see how that works because, to be absolutely honest, I'm not really happy with either Mitroglou or Jimenez up front, personally.
Yeah, I mean, he can play behind the forward. He's shown us that. I just wonder how he would go or how he would perform up front.
I would. I've seen the other two, and I've seen what they've had to offer over the past year and a half, 2 years. And to be honest, it's not what I would prefer a 9 do for us. That's what has been my take on it for about as long as Guedes has been in the team. I've always, I don't know what it is that I see in him. I see a guy who has a lot of a lot of 1v1 power, a lot of pace that I think if and a lot of willingness to chase people down, to run the channels. I see a 9 in him more than I see him as a second striker or as a winger. I've seen that since the beginning, and I must be the only one because Rui Vitoria's never done it. Under 23 level, I always think he was kind of like a second striker. They almost didn't play. Sorry, under 21 level, they almost didn't play with a striker. I think it was him and Cavaledo, if I remember right, playing up top. So it, maybe I'm crazy, but that's what I would try.
Well, it's a good shout. I mean, it's worth the try. Of course, we don't see what Vitória sees on the training pitch every day, so we don't know. We could just be speculating and could be making a player analysis and thinking, well, I think that from what we've seen from him, he could be good there, but we're not sure if that's been tried in a training pitch and that just hasn't worked, or if it doesn't have the discipline to play in that type of position. So I always
or the finishing, who knows?
Yeah, I always give the benefit of the doubt. Here's one from Ja First. Did Vitória blind faith in some players hinder the team this week, i.e. Luizão? And Steve, as you mentioned, there's a lot of people calling for Luizão's head.
Blind faith. If there's any blind faith in anybody, I'd say it's in Salvio.
Yeah.
Luizão has never had pace his whole forever. I'm sure I've had this conversation on the podcast.
Yeah,
He's
many
never had
times.
pace. Luizão's strength is his brain. Is that he knows what other teams are going to do before they're going to do it. If you get a team that is as well rehearsed as Napoli is and gets in between lines constantly with when they do even get in between lines, that the guy's facing the center backs, it makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
I know we had the slip up against Maritimo. That was, if he stays on his feet, yeah, he doesn't get to the ball, but maybe he can get a tackle and the guy doesn't shoot on net. That was bad. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
But against Napoli, he also helps that team close up a lot of space by knowing when to press up, knowing how to position Semedo. He helps a lot that you don't see it, and you only see when he gets caught for pace or he makes a slight mistake. That says Luizão has to go. I'm not saying that he's fantastic and that Lisandro may or may not do a better job. Yes, Lisandro is a good player, but I don't think that you look at Luizão and say he's the reason why we lost the past 2 games. You can't do that.
No, you can't. You can't do that. No. And look, if you
that's why you can't drop him.
Yeah, personally. Look, if you, there's a couple things, right? Here's a couple things that I'll throw out. If you're watching a game, right? If you're watching a Benfica game, rather than following the ball, look at the back line. Look how much direction Luizão gives the back line. And, watching the Napoli game, how much Luizão has to do with the fact that the team is playing so compressed in a space of 30 meters. That has a lot to do with Luizão. Of course, by the same token, you're looking at the Napoli game, the first goal, he gets pulled. He doesn't get to Mertens on time. He gets beaten. The guy gets behind his back between him and Lindelof, and he gets beaten. The second goal, one-on-one versus Mertens. Again, he gets beat because he just doesn't have that pace. He doesn't have the quickness to tackle a guy if the guy is facing him, as Steve mentioned. But I don't think that he should be the GOAT for what's going on. And we can't have very short memory, because before Luizão came on and started being in the starting 11, we were allowing all kinds of goals and dead ball situations, and that went away. That problem got solved with, I don't know how much credit we should give to Luizão, but it's a fact that after Luizão came on, that stopped right away. And again, we've talked here about tons of the organizational skills that Luizão has, how much of a reader of the game he is, and perhaps in the team right now, I can honestly say there's probably no one who can organize the team better than Luizão, especially from the vantage point that he has from the back, where he could step back and see the whole field and see how the team is positioned. Very, very important. I don't know I don't know if Lisandro has that. Lisandro is a better athlete than Luizão, no question about it. He's faster, but he doesn't have that knack yet to organize a team. You look at another guy, another option, Jardel. Jardel is a very quiet guy. I don't see him as a leader. He might be a silent leader by what he does and the effort that he puts forth, but he's not. I don't see Jardel as the guy who will constantly give instructions to the defense to organize and to put guys in the right position and to make adjustments to the lines. I just don't see it, and I think that Benfica needs that steady presence.
Yeah, I agree with you. Last season showed Jardel and Lindelof works. I just don't think that it's the right move to drop Luizão now. Personally, I maybe it is blind faith. I think that Luizão brought a little bit to the team when he came in, and we have to stick with what he's brought us for now. I don't think it's the time, especially to just swap everything out of a player that important. If you're telling me Luizão has another bad match against Sporting or a less than stellar match against Sporting, do you start to integrate Jardel? You try to bring him in. I'm not against that, but to use them as the scapegoat, like you're saying, and drop him for this match especially, I'm not going for it.
And I think that goes against the Vitória philosophy also.
So far, yeah.
He's not that type of guy who will just cut one guy's legs because he had a bad performance. I could see that from our previous coach, but I don't see that from Rui Vitória. Rui Vitória is a player's manager, and he has a bond with the player, and I very much doubt that he would do something like that based on 1-2 performances. And like I said, and Steve also mentioned, I don't think he could be used as a scapegoat. There's a lot of problems with Benfica, and I think that we've mentioned this since the beginning of the season. The fact that we don't have a proper 8, the fact that we don't have a guy to substitute Renato Sanches to fit in that role, that's number one flaw of this team right now. So there's a lot wrong with this team, and I don't think that we should be looking for goats. Let's look for guys that are supposed to be performing in a certain level. Look for those guys to perform better, or look to substitute those guys such as Salvio, guys such as Mitroglu's not grabbing his goals. Give another guy a chance. Gonçalves is not doing too well. Looks tired. Give another guy a chance. That's what I think. But I don't think that that Luizão could be held accountable for what's going on. Let's see. Here's one from Francisco Marcelin. Am I the only one that thinks that Salvio is not quite the same he was before injury? Yeah, and that was something we discussed here, Francisco, that an injury like that and a surgery like that to your knee, to a guy that relies on first step explosiveness, is something that will automatically reduce the effectiveness that you're going to have. We have yet to see the explosiveness on Salvio. Salvio used to be a guy that on 1v1, he could take basically anyone, even though he was putting his head down and taking people on, he could do it. He could create those mismatches for Benfica. But as of right now, he doesn't have that explosiveness. He doesn't have that dribble ability to get past guys. So right now, he doesn't really bring much more to the team, I think. With the exception of that explosiveness and that dribble ability, he doesn't bring much more to the team, because he's not a guy that is a combination guy, the guy that he could say, well, he combines well with this guy and that guy. He's not that type of guy, because his first instinct is always to put his head down and try to take a player on. And when you don't have that ability to take a player on, then your game becomes one-dimensional, and you become way too easy to read for a defender. Let's see. Francisco also says, should Luizão leave the 11 for Jardel in the near future? And all of see the conversation or listen to the conversation we just had 10 seconds ago. With Mo, with Rafa available, why not start over Gedge versus Napoli? Mo, the biggest thing with Rafa right now is that he doesn't have the game rhythm, and we're trying. He's coming off a muscular injury. We're trying to integrate them very slowly. We don't want to burn a guy. There's another guy that relies a lot on speed. If your muscle or the injury that you had, which was muscle related, is not totally healed, there's a big possibility that you could re-aggravate this injury, because since a lot of this, what this kid's play and skill set is based on speed, you really don't want him reaching down and putting that stress on that muscle he just got healthy. So that's the biggest thing. You got to integrate him slowly. Mario says that his preferred opponent for the knockout stages will be Listerine. Sergio says Zivkovic is better than Carrillo any day. Unfortunately, he wasn't registered for the Champions League. Here's one from Sergio. Your thoughts on reports that Luis Filipe Vieira is looking to shake up the medical department? I think there was a piece of news on the Bola record that Luis Filipe Vieira was looking to bring a guy that was at Barca before. I don't know if you got to read that.
I read that. I also read, this is the part that made it interesting. When I first saw that, I was like, BS. But I read that we lost one of the like head guys of the medical team last year. And that's what kind of made me puzzled, because yes, we've had a lot of injuries this season, but you figure that Benfica Lab's still operating the exact same way that it did before. But if we did in fact lose that guy, then that might be different. I only briefly read something about it. If I find it again, I'll try to tweet it out after. But even then, I still don't think that that's the type of thing that should be in the press, that makes its way to the press from presidents, and that doesn't make it down to player level, as far as I'm concerned. And if you ever ask me who I think leaks shit to the press, I almost always think it's players. So I think that's a bit of a BS story, personally.
Yeah. I don't, it's just something that, the media is looking for something to just write some lines. So we're not sure. As far as we know, there's no inkling that that Benfica is looking to replace their medical staff, especially mid-season now. I mean, the other thing that you got to be looking at, if training methods have been changed from this year to last year, that's causing these injuries. That's the other thing to got to be looking at. So we'll never know. Here's one for you, Steve. Would last year's Benfica Champions League team that played versus Bayern beat Napoli yesterday?
Nope.
There you go. Force is asking if you secretly want to face Barcelona in the round of 16.
Absolutely not. Kind of short answers. They're easy questions.
Yeah, Mo is saying who needs win more, Sporting or Benfica, and he's thanking you for the vote of confidence that Benfica won't win. Should I cancel my flight? So Mo is going to be at the game. But did you say that Benfica won't win?
Benfica won't win this match. If Benfica win, I'd be floored if Benfica wins this match. I'd be very happy with the tie right now.
That's just Steve being Steve, everybody. We all know what Steve brings to the pod.
Yeah. There you go.
Let's see. So who would you say needs this win more, Benfica or Sporting?
Sporting needs a win more. Benfica needs not to lose more.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense to you. A tie is a decent result for Benfica, given the history that we've had since Rui Vitória's come into the picture.
Yeah. Mo also says that he would cheat Fesa to Gelson's side to help Almeida. He said that Legia shut down Gelson in Sporting. I think Benfica can do the same thing. Mo, you can't pull Face off the. I mean, you can cheat him a little bit, but I don't think you could
Face is
especially with a two-guy midfield.
Face is normally the guy who does the first cover in situations like that, but don't use today's game or yesterday's game against Legia Warsaw as a indicator of what Gelson and Sporting can do. Uh, Here's just something to look at. Against Real Madrid, Sergio Ramos was switched from left center back to right center back, just specifically to help out, just specifically so that Varane, somebody who's very fast and very attentive on when to go and give cover to the fullback, to play on the same side as Gelson. So don't, you know what I mean?
That's where the cheat is going to occur.
Don't automatically look at that match and say, "Oh my God, Gelson's nothing. What the hell are we worried about?" Every match has its own story. I don't think Sporting really gave a crap about this match, even though I didn't watch it. That's just my.
You didn't watch it. Sporting has to give a crap about this match because they're out of Europe.
What do they want Europa League for? The money's not the greatest. They want the league. I'm telling you.
Yeah, but the president said he wanted to win the Europa League.
The president talks so much crap so often that it's not even worth talking about what he says. So that's the way I look at it. Gelson will be a problem on Sunday, regardless of how you look at it. He will be. If Almeida puts Gelson in his pocket, I would be very surprised.
Almeida will need to have the game of his life if we need to be successful in shutting down Gelson. I think that if you get Lindelof cheating a little bit to the left to double up on Gelson, I think that you open the middle up. Luizão's not the fastest guy to come and shut down that middle. So
it'll be Fesa and a lot of help from Servi. That's what's going to be the idea and the plan to stop Gelson.
And Servi does quite well for a South American who just came to Portugal.
Absolutely.
Very, very well tactically. Let's see. Portuguese says Rafa and Jonas, if healthy, should always start. I agree with you. If healthy and in game rhythm, should always start. Agreed.
Absolutely.
He also says Jardel needs to start over Luizão. Number 4 is done. I don't know. I'm not as harsh, and I think that Steve is with me. Cristiano Oliveira, blind faith in Pizzi, and he's got an emojis with the monkeys holding their mouth.
He's being a troublemaker.
Yeah,
that's all I got to say about that.
Here's one that we always like, Stephen. We always do this from Diogo Reis. What lineup would you like to see for the derby versus what Rui Vitória is going to go with?
All right, so my lineup, based on the players we have, is not that different. Yeah, I think I'd go with this. Basically, the last lineup that played in the league. So Mitroglou instead of Jimenez, take out Salvio and put Rafa. That's probably what I would do.
Salvio instead of Rafa? I mean, Rafa instead of Salvio?
Yeah, Rafa instead of Salvio. I think that's the one change that I would make given what I know about what I have seen in this team. If I was a coach and blah, 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 and saw more, I might try my whole gadget with Rafa behind him. But I obviously don't have... I've seen that once, I think, in the game that Rafa got hurt when he first played for us, which was interesting.
Yeah.
When I did see it, I'll tell you that much.
Look, for me, I would make a lot of changes, but that would entail that the guys that you change are guys that are not only game fit, but also in tune with the game idea. That for me is the biggest thing, because surely you could take out Salvio and put Pizzi on the right and bring Danilo in the middle. That's one option.
Yeah, but then Danilo's a complete unknown at this point.
That's the thing. That's the thing. He's not game fit, and he's not in tune with the game idea. But I think that the guy has the talent, and if he's fit and he's in tune with the game idea, I think he's the right guy to play in that 8 position. I think that Pizzi could also do very well on that right side,
Yeah.
especially when you have a guy behind them in Nelson Semedo that just goes up and down, and PT is smart enough to be able to cover and shut down those spaces. And then, like you said, I mean, you could play Geds up front, you could play Rafa behind them. You could play, maybe you could drift Rafa to the left, put Servi behind Geds or behind Mitroglou. There's a lot of options in there. Unfortunately, as far as the left back, we don't have much options there. Almeida's the guy that needs to be. He's going to have to deal with Gelson. But as far as the rest of the team, I think that right now, being that these guys are the most game fit, I don't think he's going to deviate much from what we've seen in the past couple of weeks as far as what the starting 11 is. I don't think that he will sit Mitroglou for Jimenez, because I don't think that Benfica will need to chase the game up front, being that Sporting is the one that has to bring the game to Benfica. I don't know if you're at the same opinion, Steve.
I think Mitroglou will start. Just more, like you were saying, more in tune of what the team is doing. Jimenez ran a lot versus Napoli, but didn't do much. He was running, but he wasn't stopping the play coming out from the center backs. He wasn't. When he did have the ball, it was always poor touches, poor decisions. I don't think he plays, really, personally. I think, like you say, if we're chasing a game, that difference, because Mitroglou is one type of player and then Jimenez is another type of player, and the center backs now have to think about a different type of movement, a different type of action. That's where I think you'll see Jimenez come in more likely.
Yeah. I think it definitely starts with Mitroglou, and then depending on the read of the game, you may change something. I do think that Benfica will not only have trouble with Gelson, as we've mentioned, they will also have trouble in the midfield.
Understandable.
Yeah, so we'll just have to see. One last thing here. Let's see. Well, Toronto plays the first ever MLS Cup final. So even though I'm a New York Red Bull fan, I'd like to give my support to Toronto. I think that they've been at it for quite some time. I think they have a very good legion of good followers up there. So I hope that Toronto does clinch that first MLS title of their history. Steve Santos, you won't be in attendance, correct?
Correct.
Right. And I think that that's about it. Jafur says, someone get pillows for Steve Santos 6 so it softens his fall when we win.
I hope you're right, Sergio. I really do hope you're right. But I can't believe that we're going to win, personally.
Right. So that's all for now. I apologize. We still have that game to give away.
Yeah, that's right.
I have not picked a winner. I promise I will pick a winner. We didn't have that many emails. I better give that game away soon, or else FIFA 18 is going to be coming out soon. Nobody's going to want that FIFA 17.
I bet you all the guys who sent you an email already bought the game.
Yeah. So anyway, we will back on Sunday at a special time. The game is at 1. Look for us around 11. 1 Eastern Standard. Look for us for about an hour and 15 minutes before game time. We will be live from studio, hopefully, and we'll bring you hopefully what will be a very good pregame show. So you could check us out. Definitely listen to us ahead of the game, and hopefully will be as entertaining as the other shows that you see on regular TV, just with the lower budget. Steve Santos won't be here, so don't be too disappointed, but Cristiano will be here, hopefully. So that's about it. At Steve Santos 6 is where you can find Steve on Twitter. At Benfica Podcast is where you can find the Benfica Podcast Twitter account. planetbenfica.co.uk. Don't forget to check out those guys over there in the articles. They do a great job every week. benficapodcast.com is where you can find our site. And that's about it. At 10CO10 is Cristiano's Twitter handle, so you could get in touch with him also. That's about it. So we'll be back next week. I think we've gone a little longer than I expected, but we'll be back next week at our regular time with the podcast breaking down the Derby. But don't forget, catches pregame Derby an hour 15 before kickoff. Thank you very much. See you guys again on Sunday. Steve, I'll see you on Tuesday.
See ya.
Later.